just going to kind of go into a little bit more detail about the services I offer. And then we might break right in time for lunch. So I do consultation, garden coaching, planning, materials delivery, installation, and maintenance. So sort of my intention, and this is kind of based around how I worked when I was at Extension and I was working with all of these different school sites, is that you're really intensively supportive in the beginning. You're at the site often, working kind of hand over hand with the teachers as well as the students, and then could step back over the years and then hopefully take on more clients. It actually tends to work in both directions. I definitely have clients that I do a consult, maybe I do a plan, and I kind of send them on their way. They say they want to do it, and then they look at it, and then 2 weeks later they're like, I'm never going to be able to do this, and then I end up doing their installation, and it's looking great, and they're loving it, and then they go on vacation, and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't maintain this. So then maybe after that they'll have then it will start to peel back, but it actually kind of ends up working in both directions. So consultation, and this is really an important part. The pre-consultation questionnaire is a really important part of doing a consultation, and it's I think that this also is going to kind of set the stage for a lot of what I'll talk about in the second talk. Thank you. And so this is my full pre-consultation questionnaire. I have it available on my website, and I also can email it to folks when they call me and say that they're interested in a consultation. And I ask them to have it filled out beforehand. They can either email it to me, or they can just have it ready when I get there. You can keep that and look over it in detail. And it's set up as an editable PDF, so where you see the drop-down boxes, that's why that's set up like that. But obviously there is the option of no, where it says just yes. But the one question I want to call your attention to is on a scale of 1 to 10, rate how important each of the following are for your edible landscape or garden. I should say or garden. All right, so I want to make sure I get my. So if they put 10 for all of them, I tell them they have to go back and they have to change it and have them understand that there is going to be a trade-off and to really rank what's important. So if attractiveness, if they want to do a front yard garden or their front yard is the only place that gets decent sunlight, I will really focus on creating structure through using maybe doing some berry bushes or having more perennials. Keeping beds full will be more of an emphasis. If yield is going to be more important to them, if they're really looking to feed their family, using intensive planting, relay planting, using reliable varieties that I know I'm not going to have to worry so much about disease, or making sure that you're doing more things that have a high yield per plant. Broccoli, for instance, it's a great big plant, but then you get your one head on, maybe you get some salad crowns, but it's not a really efficient use if you have a limited amount of space. Ease of care, do more emphasis on perennials, really long season crops. And quality, I kind of divide that out, and maybe I should divide that out on the questionnaire, when they want quality of produce, whether they're looking for exquisite heirloom varietals, or if they want something that isn't damaged, just gonna come off the vine looking grocery store perfect. So if that's the case, then if they want the grocery store perfect, then I'm going to have to do some client education. So does that mean you're willing to either use some conventional pesticides, or are you willing to use tried and true, maybe some hybrid varieties that have good disease resistant, or are you willing to be out there every morning picking tomato hornworms? And if the heirloom varietals are more in the all organic methods is what's important to them, then letting them know that there is going to have to probably be an acceptable level of damage, or that you might lose some plants. So that's probably, I think, one of the most informative parts of the questionnaire. Oh, I think I just said that. All right, well, I'll skip that slide because I already covered that. So when I go and do the consultation, we do a walk around their property, talk about what the best sites would be. Always, always err on some place that's close that they will see every day. And as a gardener, even I, who want nothing more than to be in my garden every day, know that less I walk by it, the less it gets tended to. And for new gardeners, they will think that they're going to be out there having their agrarian moment every morning, but as the summer wears on, it's not likely going to happen. So once we identify the best site, I do a soil test, particularly in urban areas. I'm looking for heavy metals and lead. I give them a visual planting calendar, garden planning cheat sheet, and then other references as appropriate. So if I know from their consultation that they're going to be limited to doing mostly containers, I have a container gardening fact sheet, and some information for folks who have what are your options if you have mostly shady places to be growing in, or dappled shade. This is, I refer to this as my Sistine Chapel. This is the visual planting calendar for Central Maryland. Timing is something that if you are new to gardening, everybody knows plant your tomatoes after last frost. Is it Mother's Day here? That's what everybody, Mother's Day you plant your tomatoes. But most people I work with are like, wow, you can grow carrots? Yes, you can. But knowing the timing of that is really tricky. And when people tell me and they were so excited they planted their beans in March, I'm like, no, you gotta wait on that. But this extension had a document when I started working there that was a list of vegetables, and then it was a list of planting dates. And my visual learning style I couldn't look at that and expect a new gardener to look at that and really kind of digest the information. So this just kind of breaks it down visually. The yellow is when to start your seedlings indoors. The dark green is when to set out your transplants, and then the light green is all for direct seeded stuff. People love this when I give it to them. And it was really helpful for me too when I was doing programming at 10 different sites, and I was like, okay, I've got a program on April 15th real quick. What are my options? So people are psyched when I give this to them. Now the garden planning cheat sheet I didn't put up here, but it's a grid that kind of gives basic information on do you plant it from seed or from transplant? What's the what seed spacing if thinned, notes on, does it need trellising? So basic sort of structural information for folks. I should have put that up there as a slide. That is a little bit of, I kind of give that at the consultation, that if they want to, they could plan a garden based on that. It's a little bit of intentionally overwhelming them because they look at it and they're like, oh wow, how, just being able to do that four-dimensional thinking around how do I space this together and also do it at the right time. I think it kind of makes a compelling case for that a plan is something that might be useful for them to have. But some people use it and they boldly go on without their plan. So after the consultation, I do a follow-up email with a summary of soil test results, garden siting recommendations, and then a quote if they want me to do a full garden plan. So garden coaching is like a consultation session, but it's sort of during the garden season. It's either scheduled or as needed, and I just come out during the season to troubleshoot or provide instruction. And usually it takes the form of me working alongside the gardener in the garden. Planning, and this is something that the format is changed a little bit with each one that I do, because there really isn't an industry standard for what a garden plan looks like. There's lots of stuff out there on the internet, and of course there's standards for what landscape designs look like, but basically you need to have your planting plan, which takes cues from traditional landscape design, but also you need to know when to do it and know what materials you need and what instructions to give. So I'm always trying, I think I say this in the next slide, always trying to find the balance between providing enough information and then providing too much information that's going to overwhelm them. So this season I'm going to start experimenting. I usually give it all at once in the beginning of the season. I'm going to start doing, potentially selling it as a package of 3 visits during the season, so spring, summer, and fall, just so that I can not overwhelm folks so much with the entire plan, but then also have that sort of be a coaching session mid-season. So here's what that looks like. I give them an overall layout of what their garden's going to look like and what the succession of crops is going to be in those beds. And then for each individual bed, and those of you who are landscape designers, I'm just taking my first landscape graphics class now, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to be doing so much better. But showing the stuff as it's seeded, so that's the spring, and then transitioning to summer, showing that I'll still have my lettuces in here, but I'll plant my tomatoes and eggplants among them. I'll pull my peas and plant beans, and my carrots will still be in there from spring. And then we will eventually pull our beans and carrots and plant our garlic, and the tomatoes and eggplant will go till first frost. And then along with that is sort of a blow-by-blow task and materials list, and then a narrative that goes along with each task, and then a calendar. So someone could easily take the calendar and do all of those tasks without reading the narrative, and I try to emphasize that to my clients, that you don't have to read the whole thing, but choose what parts are going to just give you the confidence to go out in there and do it. I already mentioned that. I'm thinking of offering a gardening book as an option with the package this season, just so that they can use that as a reference rather than me having to write out the long detailed narrative of planting depth and things like that for each plant. I do materials delivery, so if on the planting, when I do the delivery of the garden plan, it says, okay, in the springtime you're going to need a half yard of compost and your lumber to build your raised beds. I can say, okay, do you want a setup date? I can bring that out for you and you guys do the work. Or I can do full installation. That's pretty self-explanatory. Maintenance, I either do seasonal, I just come out and do pull the spent plants and do the replantings every 2 weeks, which is pretty much everything but watering and harvesting. And weekly, I've only really done for folks during client vacations, because like I said, they want to be out there doing this. And then this gives you all sorts of ways that you can kind of, in the beginning of the season, bundle together the service plans and sort of offer a discount. Well, if you sign for 3 coaching sessions now, it'll be $50 a session instead of $75, or however you want to price it. So just to kind of summarize some of the points, let me make sure I've got everything here. Really, like I said, it's really a service-driven business approach rather than a product-driven service approach. And so if you have an existing business and you want to start doing edibles, it's really got to be somebody who has an interest in education and client interaction. And like I said, service-based rather than product-based. So, but I will, in the next presentation, give you some more pictures of sort of what their products look like. So in the meantime, if y'all have any questions, in the chat. Yep.
Several, but only one right now. Just occurred. When you provide them the plants, are you growing these plants? Where do you get them?
I'm not. I work with nurseries. I would love to be doing that, but I just work with a local nursery that raises them. But I'm kind of at the point where I have to kind of set a fence around what I'd be able to do. There are some really cool urban farming things going on in Baltimore that I'd like to be, just because I want to support those farms, but also because people really are into this like touchy-feely aspect of grown in the city and eat in the city, that I'd like to, some of them have some high tunnels which could grow some of my seedlings out, so I want to kind of start working with them.
From a plant pathogen standpoint, that's an excellent thing, is to get them from closest to where you're going to,
Right.
Because a lot of times we have problems with them coming in from Florida and Georgia, and they have other pathogens that they don't
Right.
work with as much.
And that's a great point that I could use with my clients. Yeah, and I don't know if in like some of the big box stores up home, there's it's so insidious. There's a brand of, and I've seen it mostly on vegetable seedlings, but it's called locally grown, but it is not indicating that it is locally. That's like the brand name of the thing, and it's like every time I see it. Yes.
Wondering what people's expectations are in terms of the productivity. So you're in an urban environment, you talked about increasingly shrinking lot sizes. Do people think I'm going to hire Krista and be able to feed our families in the season, or what's the expectation in terms of volume?
I don't think anybody has really had that experience, and for the most part I haven't had anybody who really was like, I'm going to stop shopping at the grocery store for this. It's more about that experience. Now, my one of my clients that I've had, I guess I'm going to my 3rd season with her. She's like, I want to expand, I want more, I want higher yield, and so we're going to just, add beds. But for her, it was more around getting her kids to be, picking vegetables and eating from it. So, I think that gives you a really nice sort of cushion, because it's not a farm. The goals of a farm are yield. It's really more driven by the experience, the just that interaction with your food, and that sort of intimate relationship, as well as having something that looks nice. So, and that's something that I've always said about school gardening too. When I give talks to folks about school gardening, it's like, remember, it's not about yield. And in fact, it can be a problem when it is about. My first job after working at Full Moon Farms was I was doing my first installation of a school garden, and I was like, all I could think about was like, getting as much food out of a small space as possible. And like, then I go back to a site after not having been there for 2 weeks, because I was at all my other sites, and it's like, oh my God, the cucumbers are this big, and it was really, the yield was a problem more than it was supporting sort of the goals of that site, which was the education, the experience with the food. And I would say a lot of that sort of translates over with my clients now. Mm-hmm.
What kind of heavy metals are you finding in your soil tests?
I have been very lucky with most of my clients. Lead is the one that we're looking for the most part, and I haven't had any others. My front yard's full of lead. My backyard's fine. That's traffic, I assume. I did have one client who had a planting area that she had her eye on that was up against her house that that had lead in it, that we, from just being within the drip line of the house, I told her, like, put some vinca vine over that. Just don't make it something that you're interacting with the soil. And I do tell my clients, it's not, if you do have lead in your soil, it's mostly the concern from the literature is not so much about the food being contaminated, especially if you're doing fruiting crops. I would never do carrots or any rooting crops there. It's the dust that's on the fruit, as well as just the interaction with the soil. So if I do have a client that has lead, which luckily, like I said, I haven't had any that had lead in a place and couldn't grow somewhere else, we do barrier cloth and raised beds. But really the caution, like I said, is about the soil traveling in and out on your shoes and hands, hand-to-mouth behavior with kids, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Do you have a problem with homeowners overwatering?
I haven't. We've had really hot, dry summers the past. We had a wet end of the summer this year, but I really haven't had that too much. I do. That's one of my big things that I do talk to people about, is like, wait till it's dry. But I haven't really had that be too much of a problem, and I do almost insist that they get drip irrigation, and I'll talk about that in the next talk.